Hotline with Pat Burns on CJOR 600. Call 731-9192.
And a good evening and welcome to all you hotliners as once again we go forward with another 2.5 hours of argument, discussion, and debate on any topic under the sun. It is, as you know, the program with no false gods or sacred cows, the one that dares you to think, wants you to think, and having thought, speak out. And when you do, please get right at your subject. Imitate the tiger. Go right for the jugular. In other words, right to the real nub of whatever your point of view is. And I don't really care what your point of view is on either side of any question. Just express it. Bang, straight on. And when I say any topic under the sun, I mean precisely that, for it does not matter to me whether what you want to talk about is of a purely local nature or regional, provincial, national, international, philosophic, outer space, or sport. 731-9192 is the number to call. Now, not on the local scene, but on the, well, little bigger, more important scene, the provincial scene. That IWA strike situation is certainly not improving. I don't like what I sense, what I feel. BC Federation wants to get in the act by having a series of rotating strikes. If no solution is found within a month, I have to assume he means rotating strikes in sympathy, because you can't tell the IWA how to run the IWA strike. That means the thing spreads from the forest from the IWA, in other words, to the unions. More, the BC Federation of Labour doesn't want the Premier to intervene by legislating an end to the strike. Meanwhile, the Premier says he would not be in any position to introduce legislation in any event in the strike until about November the 25th. And he's quoted as saying, and he's quite right, the government is damned no matter which way it goes. But it goes on from there. The Wannock Industries people over on Vancouver Island, they're weighing action against the union. They're in a different situation. Their logging operation was not shut down. It was not shut down for a very good reason. It was not shut down by picketing, because they had agreed with the IWA demands in writing. A number of companies did. They had agreed in writing to the demands. You see, so the IWA, and I think quite rightly, said, well, we're not going to hit them because they have agreed. It's the other companies, bigger companies, that won't agree. But after 15 weeks of no paychecks, some of the IWA boys got a little, I don't know, I suppose, upset, burned off, or what have you. Maybe a little envious. They're getting $70 a week, and the guys working, other IWA members in the plants that are not struck, such as Wannock on Vancouver Island, getting their $650. So they're setting picket lines up there, even though those companies have no beef with the IWA at all. They have agreed with the IWA demand with respect to contracting out. So as I say, the situation is not getting better, it's getting worse. Then we have IWA President Jack Monroe, who has hinted that the strike could become much, much worse. And to quote him, and I am quoting him now, it's got absolutely nothing to do with being efficient or surviving. It's got to do with destroying the collective bargaining power of the trade union movement. And when we get that through our minds, we hope the general public will climb on board so that we don't have to go through the nonsense of shutting down the province. Now, did you get that line? That they want the general public to get it through their mind what his version is for the reason for the strike. Climb on board, in other words, more or less support the trade, the IWA, so that they don't have to go through the nonsense of shutting down the province. Well, that tends to confirm to me what President of the BC Federation of Labour said, that if nothing happens within a month, they'll go on rotating strikes. I don't see how the Premier of the province can just let it go on. If it's not, something doesn't happen by the end of this month, I'm sure he's going to have to step in, because it's going, it could result in, shutting down the province, and that doesn't make any sense at all.
The Hotline with Pat Burns on CJOR 600. Call 731-9192.
And a good evening and welcome to all you hotliners as Once again, we go forward with another 2.5 hours of argument, discussion, and debate on any topic under the sun. It is, as you know, a program with no false gods and no sacred cows, the one that dares you to think, wants you to think, and having thought, speak out. But please, think first, then speak. And when you do, not just in my interest, but in all the listeners' interest, get right to the nub of your subject, whatever your point of view is on any subject under the sun. I don't care what your point of view is, but please get right to it. And, of course, when I say any topic under the sun, I mean precisely that, for it does not matter to me whether what you want to talk about is of a purely local nature, regional, provincial, national, international, philosophic, outer space, or sports. The number to call, 731-9192. 731-9192. Well, I see where Premier Bill Vander Zalm stirred up some controversy in Victoria today by meeting with Glenn Babb, the South African ambassador to Canada. Vander Zalm says he doesn't support sanctions against South Africa to end apartheid. And he says he's interested in South Africa's plans to do business with British Columbia. And as Vander Zalm and Babb talked in a secure meeting room, a group of protesters demonstrated outside. And at one point, a shoving match developed between the protesters and a group protesting the protesters. Now, on the international scene, Japan's representative at the United Nations says his country is going to intensify talks with South African opposition leaders. He also says Japan is going to boost its financial assistance to South Africa's black population to underline its rejection of apartheid. Not bad for a country, Japan, that won't let anybody in unless they're Japanese. It is virtually impossible to immigrate to Japan, let alone obtain citizenship. Or you can go there if you're a student, you can go there if you're a businessman for a limited period of time, so on. But you can't go there to become a citizen. Not even Koreans who have been there for 50 years can get real first-class citizenship. And they are talking about some kind of discrimination in South Africa? Oh, you see how hypocrisy is part of the, well, I guess it's just simply part of the world's armamentarium. And we're back in the hotline on CJOR, where the number to call is 731-9192. 731-9192. Burns the line, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Burns.
Good evening.
I've got two things in my mind that are, I think, very important. Knife control and gun control, I think, is only relative to address one of them, because you like us to get to the point, so I'll address knife control, which doesn't apply to most people. It really has nothing to do with most people, but unfortunately, the minority, the very small minority it does apply to, it's very serious consequences and behaviors at times that affect people. I don't know. I'm troubled. How come a person can walk around carrying a knife? I mean, what do we need a knife for? I mean, if I'm in my kitchen, fine. I put it in my drawer. If I'm a fisherman, I put it still in a drawer in a certain place. I'm a construction worker, I have a place for it. Who else uses knives? Butchers, they have places for them. I mean, why do people have to walk around with knives?
Well, of course they shouldn't, and there has been, outspoken opposition to it by many people, including, I should add, Mayor Mike Harcourt of Vancouver, who doesn't see any reason why people should go around carrying knives, because obviously when people carry knives, should there, become a difficult situation, tempers flare, such as in bar rooms and so on.
That's ridiculous.
It's happened. A knife is there.
A lot of people walk into a bar with a knife and say, well, my job, I carry a knife. And yet they sit there and get drunk, and they're sitting there with a knife. Their job is out there. I mean, a carpenter leaves his hammer at the scene of at the scene of his job. I mean, if I'm a butcher, I leave my knives at the scene where I do my job. You know, I don't understand that. How come a person can carry it around?
Well, of course, the law says you can't carry a gun and you can't carry a concealed weapon. The law has not really dealt with the question of a knife. And maybe that's because, I don't know, maybe it's because they might find some difficulty in, wording a law that would outlaw all knives, including pocket knives. I don't know.
Well,
but the danger is obvious, and your fears are certainly shared by a number of other people.
Okay, well, fair enough. It does get to fine lines when a person carries a pocket knife around. But unfortunately, the law representing the citizens of the country is going to have to, the people who represent making those laws are going to have to sit down, I think, and sweat it out and say, well, look, we got to draw some lines here somewhere. I mean, is this provincial or federal?
Federal.
Well, is there anything provincial governments can do about it?
No.
Can they lobby, or is that the...
Well, they can lobby the federal government, but the whole thing comes under the Federal Criminal Code.
Now, I don't like to sound overly critical here, but did the Mr. Trudeau government have something to do with okaying knives?
No.
Oh, that was a camera on there.
No.
Fine.
It's not so much the okaying of knives as the fact that the criminal code seems to be relatively silent on the whole issue, and that goes back long even before Trudeau was Prime Minister.
Isn't that interesting? They stay silent, yet
Yet people are killed.
trend seems to increase at times. I mean, it's, every once in a while in the paper we get a great reaction to these sorts of things, but there was, I think about 6 or 8 months ago, there was some reaction in the paper in this direction, but, it doesn't go, these things don't go away overnight, unless some kind of measures are brought in and people start getting aware. I mean, I saw a guy the other day in the bank, and actually he was carrying a pouch with a hunting knife in it. I mean, he was probably okay. He might have been one of those guys that are okay. Maybe his job was that he needed it, but
not in a bank. Thanks for calling. Burns the line, go ahead.
Thank you. Is that me?
Yeah.
I can't hear myself. I went away for vacation in October. I came back and noticed that very few motorcycle riders are wearing helmets anymore. Can you fill me in on something I missed?
Well, because the motorcycle helmet law has been overthrown by courts. Now, some riders wear them because of personal choice.
The smart one's right.
Yeah. And but others, of course, who don't like to wear the helmets are covered by the fact that the law has protected them, inasmuch as the courts have decreed that the motorcycle helmet law is not a valid law. And the reason they say it's not valid, without getting too technical with respect to the judge's decisions, goes something like this, that instead of the legislature passing a law and the Department of the Traffic Department, the Vehicle Department, simply carrying out the law, that it is a measure that has been instituted by the Motor Vehicle Department itself. Basically, that is what the courts object to. That what we have here, they say, is a department making law rather than merely carrying out law. So the reason you don't see, or you see that many motorcyclists do not have the helmet, is because the law has said, or the courts have said, that the law as presently constituted is not valid.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for calling. Bye. Burns the line, go ahead.
Yes, good evening, Pat.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you a question about these new superstores or mega markets that they have out in Coquitlam.
Mm-hmm.
And I live in Vancouver, and I've just made a trip out there this week. And my family's on a tight budget here, and I'm just wondering why there aren't any of these superstores in the Vancouver area. I guess I'll hang up if you or maybe a listener can sort of answer that question for me.
No, I can answer it without you even having to hang up,
Okay.
right here. It requires the consent of the municipality, and the city of Vancouver has frowned on the type of mega superstores, large, unduly or unusually large superstores, supermarkets that you see in places like Coquitlam. The city of Vancouver has opposed that kind of development, and that's the reason you see them in in places like Coquitlam and elsewhere, and not in Vancouver. It's a civic situation.
But what is the actual situation? Like, why have they opposed it?
Well, because they think that it creates all kinds of problems, parking problems and so on. They also think that it is unfair to the small retailer.
What about the people who are really watching their food dollar? I have 3 children and a husband that works and I don't. And, I'm concerned about the price I pay for groceries.
Well, excuse me, I'm just writing one of my cancer pills. Yes, I can understand your own particular situation. And individual members of, say, the Vancouver City Council also understand your own particular situation. But taking a much broader look, over and above your saving 5 cents on this, 10 cents on that, they say that, no, the problems that it brings by way of traffic, the problems that the unfair competition that it visits upon small businessmen is not worth it. So while you may save 5 or 10 cents on this, that, or the other item, what about the small businesses who may go out of business altogether?
I guess
Then they would have a problem with their budget, wouldn't they? With no income.
I guess they were. I guess I also believe sort of in progress, too, and it's not even a matter of 5 cents here and there. I actually think I saved $30 to $50 on a large grocery shopping.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I appreciate your comments on that. Thank you very much for your
Thanks for calling, dear.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Burns the line, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
Talking about cost, may I mention something about one of the people you sponsor?
Mm-hmm.
Allied Furniture.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't amazed. I was shocked at the money I saved there. Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I live in the West End, and what I would like to talk to you about, Pat, is the people on the street that are sort of non-compos mentis and are causing all kinds of problems here. They have nowhere to go. They can't take care of themselves. Who do I appeal to? Who do I write to? Who do I bring this problem to? Whose attention?
Well, you're talking about people who are non-compos mentis.
That's right. Pat,
You mean they simply are out of it?
That's right.
Well, if they're non-compos mentis, of course, they should be institutionalized.
That's right. And believe me, Pat, we've got all kinds of people in the West End. We've got the recyclers. We've got the West End seagulls. We've got everything down here. But I'm not talking about those people because they can cope. I'm talking about the people that simply, to me, should be taken care of, and they're not. And I get so upset when I see these people and no one is taking care of them.
Well, the only thing I can suggest, really and truly, and you would have to really come up with some facts, would be to write to your MLAs in the West End, namely Mike Harcourt, the newly elected MLA, and Emery Barnes.
Right, yeah.
Because if they are of the type that you describe, then, of course, they should be institutionalized if they can't look after themselves. But you would have to, instead of being just vague and general,
right,
you would have to be a little more specific.
Right.
Because it simply wouldn't be fair to dump a letter on Harcourt or Barnes's desk and make a general statement,
right,
because then they can't help. Unless there are specific cases, names, addresses, times, dates, and so on, they can't really help.
Yeah, these are people that sleep in alleys and under bridges, and they're here and there, and then all of a sudden they appear. Pat, they don't live anywhere. They're not with it. How do you get this information on them?
No, but right off the bat, if you say they sleep in alleys and so on and so forth, if the alley or alleys were to be pointed out, actually stated, named, then perhaps that would be a lead for the MLA. But you would have to give them as much specific information. You say sleeping in alleys. You would have to name which alley or alleys, and how frequent is this? Then, of course, they've got something to go on.
It is just tragic, Pat. Just tragic. When you see these people with their carts and their filth and everything, and you know that they have no place to go and no one looking after them, and they can't look after themselves. Should I go to Mike Harcourt and should I go to Emery Barnes and say, look, should you have some people out there to keep tabs on these people, to find them and to monitor them and to help them? Is this what you're saying to me?
Yes, if you can see Mike Harcourt or Emery Barnes, because they are indeed your two MLAs for the West End, so much the better. If not, then you'd have to, write a letter. But in the letter, you'd have to be very specific. It would be better if indeed you could have a personal interview with either one or other or both. And I'm sure they would be, extremely interested in solving the problem, but they have to know the real nature and details of the problem before they can solve it. So, yes, by all means, if you can arrange a meeting with them, that would be so much better. It may require your having to write first to arrange for the meeting, but I think a meeting would be even, a superior method than just the writing.
Thank you, Pat.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
Bye. 731-9192 is the number to call, 731-9192. In cities all over the Western world and beyond, they laid wreaths on cenotaphs to honor the dead of two world wars that were supposed to be the wars to end all wars. Remembrance Day, or Armistice Day, is celebrated on November the 11th because it was on that day at 11 o'clock in the morning in 1918 that the Allied and German forces signed an armistice to end the slaughter and carnage and to end all wars, or so they said. In World War I, 61,000 Canadians were killed, virtually all the flower of Canadian manhood. But the signing of the armistice on November the 11th, 1918, proved not to be the document that would signal the end of all wars. Just over 20 years later, in September of 1939, the same nations were again at each other's throats. While World War I lasted 4 years, World War II lasted 6 years. The second war to end all wars saw 42,000 Canadians die in battle. The price of those two wars, which cost millions upon millions of lives, might have been worth the pain, the slaughter, the agony, if it had resulted in the end of war on this planet. But the evidence does not support that hope. 5 years after the end of World War II, Allied armies, navies, and air forces were again involved in a war, this time in Korea. That war went on for 3 years, from 1950 to 1953, and resulted in a peace treaty that, to this day, is a very tenuous one, splitting Korea into two countries. Mercifully, only 300 Canadians died in that war. The track record of the world where war is concerned has not been very hopeful since that time. Consider, Since then, we have had the Vietnam War, mini wars between China and Vietnam, wars between India and Pakistan. Bangladesh was a massacre. 4 wars have been fought in the Middle East between Israel and Arab countries since 1948. Quite apart from the slaughter that flows from civil wars raging in Africa, Asia, and now Latin America, there are several all-out wars being waged right now. Iran and Iraq have been slaughtering each other for 7 years. The Soviets launched a full-scale invasion of Afghanistan some 7 years ago, and the carnage continues with no end in sight. Even as remote a place as the Falkland Islands made its contribution to the bloodletting that seems to be second nature to the inhabitants of this planet Earth. And the list I have just run over is a mere fraction of the wars and uprisings, internal and external, that have taken place since the second of the world wars to end all wars took place. Europe is a fortress with East and West armed to the teeth with the most modern weaponry, including nuclear missiles. 1 million troops face each other menacingly on the Russo-Chinese border. The one consolation in all this, of course, is that since the end of World War II, we have been fortunate enough to have avoided any war between the world's major powers. So perhaps in the final analysis, the brave men and women who died in World War I and World War II did not die in vain after all. I'm Pat Burns. Is it ethical for a person to lie or misrepresent facts in order to influence other people to his way of thinking? And what would you say if the speaker doing the misrepresenting or lying was a member of the cloth, an ordained minister? One Reverend Arch McCurdy of the United Church of Canada in Toronto leaves himself open to such a charge. The Reverend McCurdy is fearful that a campaign to bring back capital punishment could be successful, and in a letter sent to I don't know how many people, he has issued an urgent appeal for contributions to defeat any such campaign. His goal is $50,000. So far, so good. The Reverend McCurdy is as much entitled to his views on this subject as I am or you are. His letter starts out, quote, "Dear friend, please take just one moment of your time and ask yourself this very important question. Should we kill people who kill people to show that killing people is wrong? Since 1976, when Parliament abolished the death penalty, Canada has been answering this question with a firm no. No, it's wrong to kill, even to kill those who kill others." Unquote. And it came to pass, as the Bible says, a term I'm sure the good Reverend would appreciate, that one of these letters fell into the hands of the very member of Parliament who was leading the campaign for a return of capital punishment, one Bill Dom of Peterborough, Ontario. And so on October 20th past, he wrote a letter to the good Reverend as follows, quote, "Dear Reverend McCurdy, I am reticent to enter into debate with a theologian like yourself and do not want to be perceived as anti-church. After all, I am the son of a United Church minister and an active member in our congregation in Peterborough. However, a few of your comments may be somewhat misleading, and a subject as important as capital punishment demands accurate and reliable information. If, as your attached letter suggests, you are attempting to enlist support for a national campaign against the reinstatement of capital punishment, it is imperative that readers understand all the facts. First of all, you stated that since 1976, when Parliament abolished the death penalty, Canada has been answering this question with a firm no. No, it's wrong to kill, even to kill those who kill others. There has never been a public opinion poll conducted in Canada since abolition that supports this claim. Results have conclusively proven that Canadians favor a return of the death penalty for acts of first-degree murder. Some specific examples include a poll by Angus Reid Associates taken in Edmonton in July this year revealed that 75% of the residents favored capital punishment. A law poll reported during September in ABA Journal, the Lawyers magazine, showed that 68% of lawyers agreed with the need for the death penalty. A 1985 PC Canada Fund survey found that 96% of the membership wanted a free vote in the House of Commons on capital punishment. In August of this year, representatives of the Ontario municipalities decided to support capital punishment. Unquote. There is much more to Dom's letter that I haven't time to read, but such as I have read effectively exposes the Reverend McCurdy's statement as at the very least gross misrepresentation. And this from a member of the cloth who's supposed to live by the biblical injunction, know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. I'm Pat Burns. Down in Miami, Florida, a grand jury refused to indict a merchant for setting a booby trap that killed an habitual criminal. The man was found electrocuted in the merchant's store. The merchant was sick and tired of being robbed by criminals and decided to do something about it, hence the booby trap. The grand jury agreed with him, and now the merchant no doubt thinks it was indeed a grand jury. We move to Calgary. Merchants in that Alberta city are rallying to the cause of drugstore owner Steve Kessler, who faces a charge of second-degree murder for killing one of two bandits who held up his store the other day. When they left the store, he picked up his hidden firearm, fired it outside the store, and killed one of the bandits. In Miami, the grand jury said, no case to answer, and refused to allow a trial to take place. In Calgary, the merchant will be put through the ordeal of a trial, a stressful thing for both the merchant and his family, and will be put to goodness knows what expense to clear his name. Like the Miami merchant, he too was sick and tired of being robbed. It was the third time in 2 years. His lawyer says public sentiment is on Kessler's side and will attempt to convince the jury that his client's actions were justified. The convincing, however, will be costly. Calgary merchants have launched a campaign to raise $25,000 as a defense fund. Which of these two examples I have given most closely approximates true justice depends upon each individual's point of view. My own view tends more in the direction of Miami than Calgary. Justice in Canada often leaves an awful lot to be desired. Sometimes even when you win, you lose. The classic case in this category being the tragic one of Rosa Becker. The story goes back some 24 years when Rosa Becker started a common-law relationship with one Lothar Petkus. Together they built up a beekeeping business and acquired more property. Then Petkus, after 18 years of a common-law relationship, told her he wanted to end it. She quite rightly asked for half the value of the business and property she had played an equal role in building up as family assets. The total value was $300,000, of which her share should have been $150,000. He threw $3,000 on the floor and told her to get lost. Rosa Becker took the matter to court, indeed court after court, until it ended up in the Supreme Court of Canada. After 6 years of court battling, the Supreme Court ruled in her favor and ordered that the property be divided on a 50-50 basis. That was in 1980. Petkus refused to pay up. The court took legal but not physical possession of the beekeeping business. He simply refused to feed the bees, and they died. No more beekeeping business asset to divide up. Last year, 2 disputed pieces of property were sold, and Rosa's share was $68,000. But the $68,000 was seized by her lawyer for legal fees. Last week, Rosa Becker, now 60, and worn out by court battles that ended up in a Hall of Victory, committed suicide by putting a .22 caliber bullet into her head. In a note to a friend, she said she could wait for justice no longer and hoped her death might help others by showing how distant the courts were from their decisions. Rosa Becker is just one more example, a very tragic example, underlining the hard truth that there is something very, very wrong with our justice system. I'm Pat Burns.
You're listening to CJOR 600, News Talk Radio, Vancouver. The Hotline with Pat Burns on CJOR 600. Call 731-9192.
And a good evening and welcome to all you hotliners as once again we go forward with another 2.5 hours of argument, discussion, and debate. But break away from my usual format tonight. As you know, I rarely have guests in the studio because I take the position that, there's all kind of guests on Dave's show in the morning from 8:45 till noon, and all kinds on Fanny's show, now being done by Linda in Fanny's absence, and all kinds of guests on Dave Abbott's show, and also on Peter Weisbach. So I usually, as just any and every topic under the sun, throw the lines wide open to you. I rarely have a guest. Well, I've got one tonight. And I think this is going to be good. Well, I got to think it's going to be good, or I wouldn't have him as a guest. man I've got is Peter Brimello. Now, you might say, who's Peter Brimello? Well, you're going to hear about this guy. I'll tell you. He's a graduate of the University of Sussex in Britain. He has an MBA. He's a Master in Business Administration from Stanford. He's been business editor, Maclean's Magazine, a columnist for the Canadian financial paper, the Financial Post, and a columnist for the Toronto Sun, Calgary Sun, Edmonton Sun, in the USA. And I believe you have just recently moved to the USA. You're not on assignment or anything. You've moved there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. In the USA, he's been an associate editor at Barron's and Fortune magazine, both two very influential financial magazines, an editorial writer for the Wall Street Journal, and I guess that's the world's #1 financial journal, and an economist on the U.S. Senate staff in Washington, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, he's written a book. It's not too long ago. How long ago did you leave Canada and go to the States?
Well, actually, Pat, I went down to the U.S. in 1980, so I've been there about 5 years.
Well, how come I've been reading you up here?
Well, that's because I was writing columns for the Sun until 83 when I started work on this book.
Well, you must have been, well, I get to your book, The Patriot Game here, and this is quite a book, I'll tell you. You would never get the impression, I got the impression from two things that you had just recently gone. One, because I kept reading your columns, and two, the book is absolutely up to date.
See, I'm passionately interested, Pat, in Canadian politics.
You must do a lot of commuting and read a lot
of...
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because your grasp of the Canadian scene is so up to date, I thought, well, Peter must have just, left for the States a matter of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago. But not so. You moved 6 years ago, eh?
Well, 5 years ago. That's right.
That's right.
But you're quite right. I commuted to Toronto at regular intervals in that period.
Now, the name of the book is called The Patriot Game, and it's by publisher Key Porter Books. $24.95. Worth every nickel of it. Now, I'll tell you, this is going to get an awful lot of people mad, this book. But then, of course, truth always gets people mad. And, Peter, the essence of this book, it's, you did an awful lot of research in this thing. You had to.
I'm afraid so.
Oh, you
It took me 4 years.
That's right, an awful lot of research. But this book has a number of theses. One is that, for better or for worse, Canada is intrinsically a part of the United States on the same continent. The other one is the story, and it's in great detail, of how the liberals, I say the liberals, but particularly since 68, when Trudeau and the socialists hijacked the Liberal Party, how they have, in fact, turned Canada into a nation where the majority, the English speakers, are now relegated to a minority in terms of influence and power.
Well, it's a state, you see, Pat. It's not a nation. There are at least 2 nations in Canada, and I actually would argue several. I think that Western Canada is quite distinct. The West is distinct from the rest of English Canada. And I say this not least because my wife is a Newfoundlander and is constantly complaining about how Newfoundlanders don't get any respect from anybody else. All these nations are all cobbled together artificially in an artificially centralized state, which is governed with it by institutions which were never designed to govern a country of this size. The parliamentary system is designed for a small, homogeneous society. Even when they put it together in 1867, they were really only federating Ontario and Quebec and a couple of maritime provinces. There was nobody from out here involved in negotiations. And the institutions are simply not suitable for a state of this size. And one of the consequences of that is, this systematic underperformance of the Canadian economy. It lags the U.S. economy in terms of standard of living by like 20-30%, and has done for many years.
The other disturbing feature of the book is, as I said, the hijacking of the party and how the French-Canadian nation, if you want to call it that, in Canada, far from Trudeau and the Liberals creating a bilingual country, they really have created 2 sharp divisions. One, where it's pretty well incumbent upon English-speaking people, if they want to get in any one of, you quote in the book, 222,000 of the civil service jobs and an even greater number of the crown corporations, and they're even trying to extend it into the private area, where if you don't speak French, you're going nowhere.
Yeah. They've imposed a form of bilingualism on Canada, which is much more radical than that which exists in countries where there is actually some demographic reality behind bilingualism. You know, like in Belgium, about 50% of the population is bilingual, but still 90% of the population lives in areas which are governed entirely in either French or Flemish. Well, in Canada, only 15% of the population is bilingual. And yet the government, the federal institutions require to be manned by bilinguals because they have to operate bilingually. And there's intense pressure put on the provinces, the Anglophone provinces, to conduct their affairs bilingually. That means basically that, you know, unilingual Canadians, and it's not just Anglophones, because 2 out of 3 of the Francophones are unilingual. They're second-class citizens. It's the only way they can make the system work. In order to make the state function bilingually, they're going to have an upper class which is bilingual, and a huge proletariat, a working class, a lower class, which is unilingual, which isn't going to play any part in the civil service, which is the largest employer of the land, isn't going to be able to aspire to the highest office in the land, the prime ministership. Even, you know, we find recently it's the speakership. Apparently you can't be speaker unless you're bilingual now. It's steadily expanding all the time.
And I think you're absolutely right. I've expressed on the air, I think we've seen the last unilingual prime minister in Lester Pearson.
Well, I don't agree with that, because I don't think they can make this work, you see. People don't realize how recent these Canadian institutions are. Trudeau really reformed Canada radically, and he invented a whole series of institutions which haven't been going very long. I mean, it's absurd on its face that 14 out of 15 English Canadians are second-class citizens in a continent which is highly democratic and egalitarian and socially mobile. You know, they're just not going to put up with it. And they don't have to put up with it, you know, because in the last analysis, the proportions of Francophones in the population have been falling so quickly, you know. It looks like by the end of the century they'll be down to 20%. It's not going to be possible to govern Canada from a Quebec base, even with idiots in charge of the Tory party, or in any party.
Well, they're there now.
Is that right? Well, let's suppose they weren't. Let's suppose they are.
Yeah.
Someday, a government's going to be elected that's drawn from English Canada alone. And it's not going to be able to make these bilingual institutions work. You know, I want to emphasize, the way the state is set up, the Canadian state is set up, it discriminates against all the different nations within it. It discriminates against the Francophones, because 2 out of 3 of them are unilingual. They don't, you know, the PQ doesn't particularly want to have federal bilingual institutions. It couldn't care less how Western Canadians conduct their affairs. It's only interested in Quebec. So, you know, they find themselves misrepresented by the Quebecers, by the Liberals. The Liberal Party in this country, and I should say I regard the Tory Party under Brian Mulroney as sort of a pale imitation of Liberals. It's like a circus stuntman. It's riding 2 horses at once, and it's misrepresenting both of them. It has to play one off against the other to get elected. You know, one of the great things about Trudeau, and we've said that, you know a lot about Trudeau, Pat. When he was nominated in 1965, when he decided to stop being a socialist and become a liberal, at least nominally, he couldn't get nominated in the Francophone riding in Montreal because he was thought to be so left-wing and so anti-clerical. He had to be nominated in the Jewish riding, Mount Royal. You know, he's not somebody who would ever have come to power in Quebec politics by himself, by itself in Quebec. He had to have this other horse to get a leg up, the English-Canadian connection. So it's really, you know, it's misrepresenting both nations. And English Canada's paying an immense price for this, in economic terms. Well,
some of the figures you quote on the cost of bilingualism are, well, there's one figure there that 400-odd million a year, but that, as you quite correctly point out, even that figure is low. That does not take into account all the costs connected with bilingualism.
There is, I guess because I was at one time an economist on the Senate staff and I spent a lot of time thinking about regulatory economics, there's a whole school of thought as to how you should analyze, you know, what the economic impact of regulations like language or regulations are. And there are various approaches that you use and rules of thumb and so on. And none of them have been used in Canada. When I researched this book, I went round and I asked every university, you know, I asked to see what work had been done on the cost of bilingualism to Canada. Nothing's been done. There's been no serious attempt to estimate it. A disgrace, a scandal in the Canadian academic world. Anyway,
that's what you refer to in your book as the self-imposed censorship.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, anyway, I figure it's about 2% of GNP. In other words, it's probably 1 or 2% GNP. It's probably equivalent to what the Americans are spending to put a man on the moon. You know, the space agency.
Well, when they get up there, they'll find it's Canada, or at least the government of Canada. 731-9192 is the number to call. 731-9192 if you want to speak with my guest, Peter Brimello.
Pat, can I make another point about bilingualism? The point about bilingualism really is not a question of money. It's a question of power. That's the key issue in the way bilingualism works in the Canadian state right now. It's a piece of social engineering. It's intensely regressive. It concentrates power in the hands in Canada, of groups in Canada, from which it was otherwise slipping. The francophones, because 2 out of 3 bilinguals are francophones, because their size, the proportion of the population was falling. The Montreal Anglos, they're by far the most bilingual group in the nation, but they were being upstaged by, Anglophones in the rest, in Toronto and in the West. Central Canada, 85% of all the bilinguals live in Central Canada, in Quebec or on its borders, and Central Canada is being upstaged by the growth of Western Canada, and also, of course, the upper middle class, basically, because they tend to be the most bilingual. And one of the effects of, as I said earlier, of bilingualism is it's going to produce a stratified society if it works. It can only work by producing a stratified society because it's clearly not going to produce, there isn't going to be bilingualism on a popular level throughout English Canada. The numbers of bilinguals in Canada haven't altered significantly now for 60, 70 years. Way back in the 1920s.
You're listening to CJOR 600, News Talk Radio, Vancouver. The Hotline with Pat Burns on CJOR 600. Call 731-9192.
And a good evening and welcome to all you hotliners as once again we go forward with another 2.5 hours of argument, discussion, and debate on any topic under the sun. It is, as you know, the program with no false gods or sacred cows, the one that dares you to think, wants you to think, and having thought, speak out. But please do think first. And when you do speak out, I don't care what your topic is, and, it can change from call to call, frequently does. And I don't care what side of any given topic you take, what your point of view or argument is. But please do get right to the point. Now, when I say any topic under the sun, I mean precisely that, for it does not matter to me whether what you want to talk about is of a purely local nature, regional, provincial, national, international, philosophic, outer space, or sports. The number to call, 731-9192, 731-9192. Well, the BC Federation of Labour today came out in support of Indian land claims. Jack Nickel, president of the United Fishermen and Allied Workers Union, said, quote, "When it comes to relationship with the Indian nations, not bands anymore, nations, in the province of British Columbia, we aren't going to let the racists run this organization," unquote. So, if you don't agree with Indian land claims, you're a racist, according to Jack Nickel. I would like to know how many Indian fishermen are in his union. Quite a few, I should imagine. The BC Federation of Labour and Jack Nickel should talk to a small logger named Archie Halita. Archie bought a small island just off Port Hardy from Macmillan Blodell 1 year ago, and then spent, for $250,000, by the way, and then spent his last nickel, another $85,000, to buy a logging truck. It was just a small island, it's true. And what do you know? The Cockayutal Indian Band have just descended upon him, claiming they own the island. 731-9192 is the number to call. Well, there certainly are some radical changes suggested in the Forget report on unemployment insurance. The chairman of the commission, Claude Forget, says the government could shave 25% off the cost of unemployment insurance benefits. He suggests moves to steer the system away from its welfare image. The report also recommends extended benefits be eliminated for regions of high unemployment and coverage for self-employed fishermen should be halted. So we'll hear from Mr. Jack Nichol on that score tomorrow. Take my word for it. Forget adds the government made a mistake appointing 2 union leaders to the commission. Says they leaked information out and criticized it before the report was ever released. One of the 2 on the commission was Jack Monroe. By the way, the commission went on for 60 days. It visited 46 different centers, received 475 oral delegations, that is, people who actually addressed the commission, and all told, 1,500 submissions from interested parties, groups, individuals, organizations, labor, management, and just anybody and everybody. So it was a pretty thorough job that was done. The topic under the sun. Burns the line, go ahead.
Well, Pat?
Yeah.
Hi. Regarding the IWA strike, I think that someone should come to sense here and say, listen, the president of FIR, is that Bennett?
I beg your pardon?
President of FIR, F-I-R? Bennett?
Yeah, Keith Bennett.
You know, I think somebody should say, you know, Bennett, you and both Monroe, take a little week holiday. Go down to Florida or Hawaii or something. Just take a week and get away and think about what you're doing. You know, here we are, a little spot in the world and causing such controversy and such pain for everyone in the whole province. And they don't think about what they're doing. And I think a little holiday for both of them would do them a lot of good. What do you think?
Oh, well, just a moment. No, I don't.
No?
No, I really don't. You got to remember that Keith Bennett is not the number one. He is the spokesman, that's true.
Yes.
But he takes his instructions from the group of forest companies that make up the FIR, including the big giants like McMillan Blodell.
Yeah.
And as long as they're saying no, he has to represent their wishes. In a sense.
In a sense.
But in a sense, they have come a little bit of the way anyway, in as much as they have accepted the Hodgson Commission report.
Yeah.
The union has not.
Okay, well, maybe...
Now, I know what Jack Monroe would immediately fire back at me. He'd say, well, sure, why wouldn't they? It was all in their favor. I don't really know whether it was all in their favor or not. According to Keith Bennett, it was not. There were things in there they didn't like at all.
Yes.
But they said, okay, we'll accept it.
Yeah.
But, as I say, the union has not. Right off the bat, you remember Monroe's statement, the document is so flawed, it can't be amended. It's just, outrageous, and urged everybody to vote against. So,
well, maybe Monroe is the one that needs the holiday. Actually, probably that's what the bottom line is, that I think he needs a little bit of a break. They're so jammed into their thoughts that I don't think there's any way that they could cool off without having a bit of a break to see what they're really doing.
It's very difficult for someone not fully familiar with the whole of the logging scene, the forest scene, forestry itself, to really know whether the union is standing on legitimate ground, standing on principle, and legitimately so, or whether their view is somewhat excessive. It is very difficult to come down flatly on the side of the union, unless you're a union member and you understand what the whole thing is all about,
right,
or to come down flatly against the union.
I agree with you 100%, Pat, but what I'm trying to get at here is that maybe a different perspective is needed on the whole situation, a little bit of travel to realize the tiny little speck that we are on this world, where, what they're doing to this little speck, right? And they don't seem to understand that by sitting in Vancouver this whole time. I don't think Jack even gets out and talks to the men, but...
No, he was up there in Chemainus today talking to them.
Were you?
Yeah, he was, yeah.
He was, okay.
Yeah. I think that they were declaring certain logs hot to a certain mill. Yeah, and he said no, if it was to support the union position, he said their picketing should be at a different mill, I believe.
Yeah, okay.
So he's out there with them.
Well, those are Washington logs that are coming in there to run that Alberni pulp mill, the strictly Washington logs.
Mm-hmm. There is, mind you, such a thing as from time to time as a strange labor mentality.
Oh, that's...
For example, in Belfast in Northern Ireland, the prisoners wrecked their cells after a sudden strike by the guards.
Uh-huh.
Why did the guards go on strike? Get a load of this, because one of their cohorts had been disciplined when he was found asleep at his post.
Oh, yeah.
Well, don't you think that you would discipline someone, especially a guard in a prison, if you found him asleep at his post?
Yeah.
Well, the other guards didn't think it was fair, so they went on strike.
Yeah. Well,
That's why I say there can be, from time to time, a strange labor union mentality.
well,
But I'm not saying that is so in this case, because I think those of us, who express our views on it, one view we all have, of course, and that's both sides, is we wish to God there were an end to this whole thing. It's not doing anybody any good.
that's right.
But to express with any real degree of conviction whether the union is right or management is right, or whether they're both a little bit right, or whether they're both a little bit wrong, I think would require the expertise that people like Bennett and Keith Bennett and Monroe have.
Yes. Oh, of course, I agree. Yeah.
Thank you for calling.
Okay, bye.
Bye. 7319192 is the number. Call 7319192. The IWA strike has gone on much too long. Whether this is the fault of the union or management, I am not prepared to say, nor is it my intention to come down in favor of one side or the other. Those of us in the media who are so quick to dispense our ignorance and peddle it as wisdom should remember that we don't have all the answers. Have you ever thought what a wonderful world it would be if only we could install editorial writers, columnists, and radio commentators as the governing body of the country? We theoretically have all the answers to all the problems, from unemployment to international terrorism. It's a dangerous game because we lead people to believe that all problems can be solved by a couple of hundred words. Having chastised myself, for I am included in the group that I have just criticized, I want to move on to the IWA strike. I don't know how many of you have noticed, but I rarely do a commentary on matters that are purely local or provincial. I'm not sure I know why, but today will be a departure from the norm. I said I wanted to talk about the IWA strike. Not quite. I want to talk about labor generally. I'm at a loss to know who is right or wrong in the IWA strike. All I know is that both sides are contending for a principle. The union, the principle of protecting jobs by avoiding contracting out. The companies, the principle that technological advances must take precedence over protecting jobs. The strike has dragged on for, more than 4 months now, and the indications are that it will drag on for many more months. I'm not about to attack the IWA, for I have a genuine compassion for the wives and children of the workers who are the innocent victims of the strike. No. Rather, I want to talk about the BC Federation of Labor, which, in their misguided zeal, are stating, threatening would be a better word, to come to the assistance of the IWA by calling strikes in industry after industry to help the cause of their brothers in the IWA. It must not be allowed to happen. To have union after union go out on strike in support of the IWA would bring economic anarchy to British Columbia. Innocent people would be hurt. Thousands of them. I don't know what Premier Bill Vander Zalm has in mind, but he must not allow this anarchy to take place. There is a simple remedy. I don't often go to Quebec to find solutions to problems that afflict us, since Quebec seems to be a province that is awash with problems they can't solve. But in this matter of a labor dispute where unions would illegally go on strike, they do provide a solution. Simple, swift, and very effective. Faced with exactly the same situation, where a host of unions decided to go out on strike illegally in support of a union that was legally on strike, the province acted with great dispatch. The National Assembly, as their provincial legislature is called, passed a law unanimously that rescued the province from labor anarchy. The law laid down that every union man was subject to a fine of $100 for each day that he was on strike illegally, $1,000 a day for the union leaders, and $20,000 a day for the union itself. That did it. The men went back to work the next day. Without in any way interfering with the bargaining process in the IWA strike, I think Premier Vander Zalm should take the same action. A civilized society simply can't afford labor anarchy. I'm Pat Burns.
Now for Pat Burns Hotline.
The Hotline with Pat Burns on CJOR 600. Call 731-9192.
And a good evening and welcome to all you hotliners as once again we go forward with another 2.5 hours of argument, discussion, and debate on any topic under the sun. It is, as you know, the program with no false gods and no sacred cows, the one that dares you to think, wants you to think, and having thought, speak out. But please do think first, then speak. And when you do, get right to your subject. Don't imitate the crab or the snake, go sideways or coil, get right to it. Imitate the tiger, go right for the jugular vein. In other words, get right to your point. And when I say any topic under the sun, I mean, of course, precisely that, for it does not matter to me whether what you want to talk about is of a purely local nature, or regional, or provincial, national, international, philosophic, outer space, or sports. The number to call, 731-9192, 731-9192. Well, I'm sure in common with all of you, I am absolutely delighted that the forest industry and the IWA have settled their strike. Who wins or loses on the thing is neither here nor there. The fact that it is settled means we are all winners. It went on much, much, much too long. And I'm delighted for the individual members who now go back to work, to their wives, and to their children. It would have been an awfully glum Christmas had the strike gone on. So let's not, well, you can if you want to. I was going to say, let's not argue about who won, who lost. Nobody wins in a strike, to tell you the truth. The fact that it is over, that it is resolved, that it's settled, and that according to Jack Monroe, the IWA got the best possible deal it could get in the circumstances, should really be good news for all of us. I'm delighted it's over. Well, at noon hour, I went down to the Hotel Vancouver and heard my favorite black South African, Chief Mangathuso Buthelezi. And I'll tell you, when you hear Chief Buthelezi, he's the chief of the Zulu tribe, the largest single entity in all of South Africa. Over 6 million Zulus live there. When you hear him, the man's tolerance, patience, his low-key approach, and his absolute hostility toward sanctions, though he doesn't rant and rave about it, he is absolutely against sanctions. When you hear it right from the guy I call the number one black in all of South Africa, you get to really realize that sanctions are not the way to go.
The Hotline with Pat Burns on CJOR 600. Call 731-9192.
And a good evening and welcome to all you hotliners as once again we go forward with another 2.5 hours of argument, discussion, and debate on any topic under the sun. It is, as you know, the program with no false gods or sacred cows, the one that dares you to think, wants you to think, and having thought, speak out, but please do think first, then speak. Yeah, it works better that way. Really, it does. And when you do, get right to your point, imitate the tiger, and go right for the jugular, straight at it. And, of course, when I say any topic under the sun, I mean precisely that, for it does not matter to me whatsoever, nothing at all, whether what you want to talk about is of a purely local nature, or regional, or provincial, or national, or international. You're not stuck with any call. It doesn't matter what the caller before you, what his topic or her topic was. You decide what it is you want to talk about. It can and frequently does change from call to call. 731-9192 is the number to call. Well, I said last night that it looked like our lumber dispute with the United States was over. As we all know now, the Premier, who was the source I referred to when I said, although I didn't name him, I said, a very, very good source. Well, the Premier, who was that source, admits today he was a little hasty. He was jumping to conclusions, which means we're still at square one with the Americans on a lumber tariff. No, that's province-wide, because it'll affect the whole of the province. At the strictly local level of Vancouver, the Vancouver Council yesterday reversed the policy of requiring an outside contractor to pay its workers fair wages and benefits on a par with those of City Hall staff. This, of course, for contracts handed out by the City of Vancouver itself. I can buy that. But at the same meeting, the same council gave themselves a pretty hefty pay increase. Little contradiction there. Nevertheless, I'm glad to see they turned down a peace group's request for a grant. Now, that peace group is going to be back, I believe, next year. May they turn them down again. These peace groups want to go running around with their demonstrations. Well, free country, they can do it. Do it on their own money. 731-9192. The international level, we got a problem coming up here. Canada and the United States again, but it's not the lumber problem. A little bigger than that. I think they're headed for a major territorial dispute. The Americans are issuing drilling permits in the Beaufort Sea to American oil companies, despite the fact that Canada claims sovereignty over the area. A U.S. Interior Department spokesman had the gall to say, we issue permits for areas we believe are American territory. If there's a dispute, we'll work that out later. How long is later? You go on issuing permits now, and maybe 50, 100 of them, and perhaps maybe you do strike a real bonanza oil, and you don't settle a dispute for 10 years later. Do you think they're going to give us all the oil back, or the money that they got from selling the oil? What a gall. If there's a dispute, we'll work that one out later. In the meantime, they'll go on issuing the permits. 7-3.
The Hotline with Pat Burns on CJOR 600. Call 731-9192.
And a good evening and welcome to all you hotliners as once again we go forward with another 2.5 hours of argument, discussion, and debate on any topic under the sun. It is, as you know, the program with no false gods or sacred cows, and the one that dares you to think, wants you to think, and having thought, speak out. But please do think first, then speak. And when you do, get right to your subject. Don't coil into it or, do the emulate the crab, go into it sideways, get right to it. And, of course, when I say any topic under the sun, I mean precisely that, for it does not matter to me whether what you want to talk about is of a purely local nature, regional, provincial, national, international, philosophic, outer space, or sports. On the purely local scene, and by local in this case I mean the city of Vancouver, I see where Vancouver Mayor Gordon Campbell says he plans to review the city's bylaws. But there's one bylaw I'll bet he won't disturb. I don't know whether he'll review it, but he won't disturb it, though it is broken every day. And he won't disturb it because it would be political dynamite to do so. I'm referring to the bylaw governing single-family dwellings. Nobody, and I mean nobody, knows how many illegal suites there are in Vancouver. The estimates go as high as 40,000. And I don't think Gordon Campbell, the new mayor, will touch that bylaw any more than the last civic administration, or the one before it, or the one before it, or the one before it, for as long as I can remember. I've heard city councils say they must do something about the illegal suites in the single-family areas. They never do, and I don't think this is going to be any different, because they say if the estimates go up to 40,000, that could be political dynamite. Not just for the 40,000 who are in the political suites. You may have to multiply that by 1.5. If there are 2 people in the suite, that's 80,000 persons, if there are 40,000 suites. Then, of course, you also disturb the person who's getting the revenue. Person or persons. Man and wife, for example. We're getting the revenue from the illegal suite. So, since politics is really the numbers game, I don't think that's one bylaw they'll touch, even though, as I say, it's openly violated every day of the year. On the international scene, that Canadian connection in the Iran arms deal apparently is not an isolated incident. Now, no doubt not on the same scale as the $10 million deal that surfaced recently in the arms for hostages arrangement between Washington and Tehran. But American officials claim almost half of the 84 cases of arms smuggling to Iran that they know of since 1981 have a Canadian connection. Now, doesn't it surprise you? It does me. But they claim the stuff comes into Canada fairly easily because we are part of NORAD and NATO. And the assumption is it comes in because we are partners in NORAD and NATO. Then it's transshipped from here to another country. I don't know why, but I didn't think this country was in the arms shipping business in such a big way. And let me quickly add, that's not the government in the business of shipping arms. I don't mean to knock the conservative government for that. There's enough to knock them about legitimately. They're not in the business of shipping arms to other countries, such as Iran, but individual Canadian entrepreneurs are. Matter of fact, you know, this whole business of shipping arms to different nations is a very murky and puzzling business. We know that the CIA was involved in shipping arms to Iran in exchange for hostages. Now we read that the CIA has also shipped arms to Iraq, a country that Iran has been locked in mortal combat with for approximately 7 years, and in which several 100,000 military and civilian personnel have died. Indeed, some say that figure is low. Thus, we have the CIA shipping arms to both sides in that war. Oh, murky and puzzling are but two words to describe it. You're listening to the hotline on CJOR, where the number to call is 731-9192. 731-9192. Any topic under the sun? Let's go with the first call. Burns the line. Go ahead.
Yes, Pat.
Yeah.
Did you hear this young fellow just before the 8 o'clock news broadcast talking about immigration of these Turkish peasants coming in, 1,500
No,
of
on
them?
Peter's show, on Peter Whitebass? No, I'm sorry.
Hear that?
No, I was too busy.
Boy, you should make an effort to see if you can get hold of what he's...
Well, no, I'm well aware of what the...
Anyway, they're all in they came in at Maribel, coming in
That's
at
right,
250 a week or a month.
Yeah, that's
They're
right.
all on welfare.
That's right, but and of course, what has been described as sleazy lawyers and travel agents have informed these people in Turkey that Canada desperately needs immigration and they're looking for Turks.
Yeah.
Well, of course,
dumb Canada's a garbage dump.
That's right, in they come. So they'll claim a refugee status or whatever, I don't know. But once here, it seems, you know, virtually impossible to say to someone, no, I'm sorry, this isn't the local garbage dump.
Look, what I really wanted to talk about was Saturday afternoon, a CBC news broadcast. Right at the very end, as a fellow came on and was berating the news media, which I heartily agree with, for not picking up two very important stories. You know this Jane's military hardware book, publication that they put out, Jane's...
well, that's, it's put out in London, England.
Yeah, it's
Jane's Fighting Ships is its name.
Pretty reliable publication, apparently.
Yeah, the official name of it is Jane's Fighting Ships.
Yeah. And anyway, this fellow was saying there's two things that they didn't mention that's in a very recent publication of Jane's, that the Russians do have a satellite destroying apparatus, or whatever you want to call it, in operation. It's working. Also, they have...
Well, they published that, and it actually was in local papers. I was amazed.
It was?
Oh, I think I made mention of it, but I was amazed nobody
Well, this guy was jumping up and down because the media had never published not a single word about it.
True.
And also
Not true. That was published in the local papers, or at least one of them, I would say, within the last 2 weeks or so. And I made reference to it, and the significance of it is it's something along the line of Star Wars.
Yeah, that's right. That's what the guy did say. He said they've got their own version of Star Wars.
And yet, to hear Gorbachev and the Soviets talk about what a terrible thing the Americans are doing for the prospect of world peace on the Strategic Defense Initiative, and then according to Jane's Fighting Ships, which is said to be a very, very reliable publication and has, all kinds of contacts, they claim that they already have a capability similar to that.
As far as the nuclear-tipped cruise missiles, I knew about that nearly a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They were operational, apparently. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I got a picture of either a Badger or a Badger, or what's the other one? Big their big Russian bomber, the bear and the badger. One of the two, anyway. It shows you them carrying it right underneath the wings.
Now, he's wrong to say there was no mention of it. There was no what you would call real follow-up on it. There was certainly no editorial to say how disappointing it is to hear this. I don't know of any columnist that took it up, but there was a very, very short story that I picked up in the paper.
They were probably too damn busy running around with this arms to Iran crap.
And condemning the Americans for doing the same thing
that's right. There
that
must
the
be
Soviets have been trying to do for years.
Flying arms to various Arab countries.
Thanks for calling.
Okay, good night.
7319192 is the number. Call 7319192. Burns the line. Go ahead.
Oh, hello?
Hello?
Hello. I'd like to talk about tomatoes. Is that okay?
You'd like to talk about tomatoes?
Yeah.
Rather unseasonal if you're growing them, but go ahead.
Yes. What would be the best time to plant the tomatoes in the season?
Oh, gosh, I would have to say in the spring, but just when in the spring and what the conditions should be, I think you would have to get a vegetable gardener. Certainly the spring is the obvious time, but I don't know whether there's such a thing as early in the spring or late in the spring. I don't know. You'd have to get a vegetable gardener to tell you that.
Oh, 'cause we've had tomatoes in our garden, and they're really big and everything, but they just don't seem to get red or anything.
Well, gee, I wouldn't expect them to get red at this time of the year unless they were in a hothouse.
In the springtime, I was just wondering.
Yeah, if they were in a hothouse, I could see it then, I suppose, but not, to be grown naturally in the soil outside. However, maybe some vegetable garden will call up during the course of the show and let us know, so just keep listening, little one.
Okay, well, thank you.
Bye. 7319192 is the number to call. Burns the line. Go ahead.
Hi, Pat.
Hi.
I'd like to wish you Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And I got a math question for you. Can you add 1,020 and 1,020?
Well, I would say offhand that's 2,040.
Okay, then add 50.
That's 2,090.
And add 10.
3,000.
No, it's not. It's 2,100.
Oh, it's 2,100.
Yes. Someone told me that. It's just a joke, and I thought I'd get you...
Oh, I see. It's 2,040, and then 2,090, and you add 10, and it's 2,100. Yeah. Okay, doll. You nailed me. Bye.
Happy New Year.
And to you, too, dear. 7319192 is the number to call. 7319192. The Democratic Party finally cracked the province of Quebec by the back door with the announcement that Montreal MP Robert Toupin today crossed the floor to sit with the Socialists. True, he didn't make the large leap from Conservative to Socialist all in one fell swoop. That would be too much for the ordinary member of the public to swallow. No, he first quit the party some months ago, allegedly over the closing down of an oil refinery in Montreal, and sat as an independent. Today, the other shoe dropped when he announced he had joined the New Democrats. What does this mean to the fortunes of the Socialists in La Belle Province? Well, it could mean an awful lot or nothing at all. To begin with, it marks the first time the New Democratic Party has ever had a sitting member from Quebec, either federally or provincially. It is true that he was not elected as a New Democrat, but if the polls in that province are anything to go by, the Socialists have a right to be confident of winning seats in Quebec in the next election. The first thing you have to remember about Quebec is that it is a politically volatile province such as no other in Canada. The natives down there can be any political stripe at any given time. During the years when the late Maurice Duplessis led his ultra-conservative Union Nationale Party to victory after victory, the federal Conservatives went down to humiliating defeat after humiliating defeat federally in that province. When the late Daniel Johnson was the Union Nationale leader, he sounded more separatist than René Lévesque. When Lévesque finally led the Parti Québécois to victory in 1976, he actually had cabinet ministers who carried a conservative and liberal cards in their wallets. 2 years ago, Quebec gave Brian Mulroney's Conservative Party the largest number of seats the Tories ever won in that province. Yet a year later, they gave the Liberal Party under Robert Bourassa the largest majority provincially any party ever received. So you can see, trying to figure out how Quebecers will vote in an election, provincial or federal, is like trying to solve the riddle of the Sphinx. Nevertheless, having said that, there must be nothing but jubilation in the New Democratic Party camp today. Not only are they doing better than at any time in their history in the polls in that province, there are other indications that the socialist fortunes may really have taken a major upturn. A couple of months ago, former Premier René Lévesque warned anyone who would listen that the New Democrats were on the rise and that they probably would finally establish a real electoral base in Quebec. It would not be an unpleasant prognostication for him to make, since Lévesque himself is a socialist, and since he realizes that most of his supporters in the Parti Québécois were also socialist inclined, and with the Parti Québécois in total disarray, it would not be unnatural for his supporters to find a new home in the New Democratic Party. While it is true that one political swallow like Robert Toupin does not make an electoral victory summer, his defection to the ranks of the New Democratic Party could herald the breakthrough the New Democrats have long sought in a province without whose support they can never hope to form a national government. I'm Pat Burns.
The Hotline with Pat Burns on CJOR 600. Call 731-9192.
And a good evening and welcome to all you hotliners as once again we go forward with another 2.5 hours of argument, discussion, and debate on any topic under the sun. It is, as you know, the program with no false gods or sacred cows. The one that dares you to think, wants you to think, and having thought, speak out. Please do think first, then speak. So many people reverse the order. And when you do, get right to your subject. Spring right at it, like the tiger. Go right for the jugular vein. Don't coil into your subject. Get right to it. Makes it far more interesting for me and everybody else listening in. And of course, when I say any topic under the sun, I mean precisely that. For it does not matter to me whether what you want to talk about is of a purely local nature or regional, provincial, national, international, philosophic, outer space, or sports. And there's no such thing as, I do get a little irritated sometimes when people get on the line and say, Pat, I'm not on the subject, but there is no such thing as a subject. It may, can, and frequently does change from call to call. The subject is what you, the individual caller, makes the subject. You're not stuck with any given subject. The number to call, 731-9192. Now, locally, the food bank people had a meeting with Premier Van der Zalm yesterday, which made the four bank directors feel, that is, the four food bank directors, feel very positive about the meeting. They made a number of recommendations to the Premier, including higher minimum wage and welfare rates, a long-term job creation program, better incentives for people to get off welfare, and improved child care facilities for single parents. All very good ideas, I suppose. But did the four food bank directors tell the Premier where he would get all the money to do these things? No. They remind me of children who are forever telling their parents about all the toys and presents they want, but never tell the parents where the money is going to come from to pay for them. On the national scene, according to the Globe and Mail, some Chinese crime gangs are moving their, I don't like this one at all, are moving their international headquarters to Toronto to avoid China's takeover of Hong Kong in 1997. The gangs are called triads, Triads, triads. They have about 80,000 members in Hong Kong and earn money worldwide through extortion, gambling, prostitution, fraud, robbery, and drug smuggling. The Globe and Mail says they're funneling millions of dollars of their ill-gotten gains into Toronto right now and investing it in real estate and business. Just the kind of people we need in this country, eh? 731-9192 is the number to call. 731-9192. Again, on the national scene, an armed forces study group has recommended to the government that gays not be allowed in the armed forces and that women not be accepted for combat duty except in helicopter squadrons. Needless to say, with a knee-jerk reaction, Liberal MP Sheila Copps opposes the recommendation. 731-9192. 731-9192. Let's go with the first call. Burns the line. Go ahead.
Hi, Pat.
Hi.
Calling out from Bridal Veil Falls. Listen to you every night and enjoy
From
it.
where?
I have.
From Bridal Falls?
Yes. Yes, listen to you every night.
Well, that's on the road to Hope, isn't it?
That's right, halfway from Chilliwack.
Oh, yeah. You're quite a way out, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I have 4 quick questions, 2 on boxing, 2 on racing, and then I'll hang up and listen if you don't mind.
All right, doll.
First 2, whatever happened to Cassius Clay and Norton? Not necessarily together, but each one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the other 2, what is a triactor and what is a quinella? I'll hang up and listen.
All right, doll.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I'll just repeat her question so she has time to get to the radio. 2 questions on boxing, 2 on racing. Whatever happened to Cassius Clay, whatever happened to Norton. Well, both have been retired for some time. Cassius Clay does, that's Muhammad Ali she's talking about. He does a bit of traveling. Unfortunately, you don't see him too often on television these days. And you certainly don't see him doing any commercials or anything like that, because the truth is that his years taking punches to the head have given, I don't know what the name of the illness is, but he's got it where, his speech is slurred, where he used to be on the bit and fast and sharp with the words and so on. Well, he's slowed down to a walk when it comes to speaking. His speech is very slurred. He has some difficulty concentrating, and all in all, he's somewhat of an embarrassment. And that's why you don't see him featured on television, as he would often be, either in commercials or, guest celebrity thing and so on and so forth. But he's doing nothing in particular, and the reason you don't see him is that. Norton, on the other hand, is retired. He didn't take too many shots to the head, and he's in excellent shape, wisely retained and invested his money, and he's just sort of a businessman now. What is a triactor? What is a quinella in racing? A triactor in racing is where you attempt to pick the horses that are going to run first, second, and third in exactly that order. In other words, if you make your triactor bet 1, 2, and 3, and 1 wins it all right, but 3 comes second and 2 comes third, you've lost. If you make your triactor bet 1, 2, and 3, the horses must come first, second, and third in the order in which you have placed them. What is a quinella? A quinella is a bet in which you are involved in only 2 horses. Any 2 numbers. Let us say again, numbers 1 and 2. Well, in a quinella, it doesn't matter if number 1 wins, number 2 comes second, or if number 2 wins and number 1 comes second. See, it doesn't matter. You name your 2 horses, the bet involves 2 horses, and it doesn't matter as long as one of them wins and one of them comes second. It doesn't matter which one wins and which one comes second. That is what a quinella is. Okay, doll, that's it. 731-9192 is the number to call. 731-9192. Burns the line, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, caller. Yeah, hello? Go ahead.
Mr. Burns, on the question of Santa Claus, I was faced with that question when my son was 7 years old. He comes home from school, and he says, Mom, there's a kid at school that says there's no Santa Claus. So he's waiting for an answer from me, so I thought for a few seconds, and I said, well, how come all those kids that believe in Santa Claus get so many presents? And he said to me, yeah, and he was very happy.
That straightened that out.
Yes.
Remember that priest in New Jersey who upset all the parents by telling children their parents were lying when they told them about Santa Claus, the North Pole Workshop, and Rudolph?
Yes.
Well, believe it or not, he has suddenly been told to take a leave of absence.
Good.
I hope Santa brings him a one-way ticket to the South Pole, not the North Pole.
That's for sure.
Thanks for calling, dear.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
7319192 is the number to call. Burns the line, go ahead.
Hello, Pat.
Hello.
You know this character that the Immigration Ministry has been protecting, this John Michael somebody or other?
Lewis.
Lewis, yeah. What a despicable character, and it makes me wonder what character the people are that are protecting him here in this country.
Or why.
Or why. The other point that I wanted to
Now, I see Ottawa is changing its tune. 2 days ago, Jerry Weiner, the junior minister of immigration, said there was nothing they could do to upset the appeal board decision. That the government could not intervene. Well, late yesterday, they suggested that they were very busy with their lawyers trying to see if they could take the issue into the Federal Court of Canada, see whether or not they could, overturn the appeal board, the Immigration Appeal Board's ruling. And I see today, lo and behold, they have decided they will be going into the federal court.
Yes, I heard earlier today on your station, Abbott's program, I guess.
But you'll notice 2 days ago, the junior immigration minister, Weiner, said they couldn't interfere with it.
Well, he's apparently going to be on your show sometime tomorrow.
On Peter's show tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning.
Yep.
The other thing was, I would like to hear you call him up on that program, and I'd like to listen to the Pat Burns of the 1960s talk to this guy, not particularly the Pat Burns of the 1980s. He's become a real pussycat.
Oh, I see. Okay, thanks for calling.
All right.
Bye. 731-9192 is the number to call. 731-9192. Any topic under the sun. Burns the line, go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Burns.
Yeah.
This drinking driving and in some cases just plain careless driving in the West End is something terrible. And tonight I was right in the crosswalk, and this idiot wheeling along, he didn't even try to stop down. He got darn near gunned me down. I was legally in the crosswalk, and now I don't see too well. I had some stuff that was pretty bright so that the idiot could see. I had a Safeway bag with a red S in it and a white background, so somebody should be able to see that, I think.
Well, you're never going to stop people getting behind the wheel of a car, even if they're cold stone sober, and, exceeding the speed limit and acting somewhat irresponsibly. That is going to happen, and there's very little the police can do about it unless they happen to be there at the time.
Yeah.
When you consider the number of police cruisers there are versus the number of vehicles that are on the road at any given time, it's a no contest. It has to be 100 to 1 that the police will just happen to be where the guy is. Now, I know myself that right here, we're at the corner of 8th and Hemlock, for example, and 8th and Hemlock is a street that is downhill, you see, from Broadway, and leads right on to the Hemlock Street ramp of the Granville Bridge.
Yeah.
And I assure you that between Broadway or 8th, going up to the bridge, the day after day and night after night, I see them belting down that road at an awful speed, an awful lot faster than the restricted 30 miles an hour. Now, it's not that they're drinking or anything. It's just that I guess they feel going downhill, they want to get a good run up the ramp or whatever. But, on a rainy night, on a dark and rainy night, they're belting down that quick, and I mean quite a few of them. It tells me that, but what can you do? If people get behind the wheel of a car and they're determined to break the law, and the law says 30 miles an hour, there's really not much you can do about it.
What I'd suggest?
No, you first of all have to suggest that a policeman is going to be there. That's the first thing you have to suggest. And they can't be everywhere.
No, but I'd say every once in a while have those blocks that they have, that mysterious ones. They're sort of hidden,
Yeah.
And when you get